from 9 times in prison to being a prison guard. This is the story of Rachelle Conley. This is Justice Voices, eye-opening stories and insights about justice, healing, and safer communities. This episode is brought to you with support from the Field Foundation of Illinois through a Healing Illinois grant administered by United Way of Central Illinois. Rachelle, welcome to our program.
Glad to be here.
And Mr. Joyner, Leonard Joyner, we appreciate having you here as my co-host.
Thank you, Mr. Risley.
And my name is David Risley. Ms. Connolly, you have a unique perspective because you're the only person I know who has gone to prison a total of 9 times, 2 as a juvenile, and then 7 as an adult, and subsequently was hired and became a prison correctional officer, a prison guard.
Yes, sir.
That is a story that just has to be told. And your perspective, your voice is one that has to be heard. We're really interested in hearing about how you ended up going to prison, what was behind that, what was the story there, but then this cycle that you got in. So just go ahead and tell us about that.
Well, technically growing up, I grew up in a single parent home with my mother. Got rebellious at a young age, ended up in foster care. Technically, I didn't want to stay. I wasn't used to that type of environment. And the things that take place in some foster care is not all bad. I just couldn't see myself getting used to that lifestyle. So I took it upon myself to run away. Upon running away, I ended up getting in the streets and getting involved with people who I picked up a lot of bad habits with. Shoplifting was one of them. Became what they would call a booster. And would steal clothes and would sell them. That's how I supported myself. And by the grace of God, I'm still here because a lot of people that I grew up with that, are not here anymore, that were also in the circle. But we would boost clothes and we would sell them. And then I dealt with a lot of anger issues, mental health, abandonment, rejection from family. And I would run away and go back home and my mom would turn me in and have them come get me. So I would get, real discouraged, get down, get depressed. And I had a friend introduce me to drugs then. And that's when I had started drug addiction, marijuana, alcohol, cocaine. They reassured me it would ease the pain and, it would take away, the feelings that I was feeling at that time. And mind you, at the time, I'm only like 14, 15. So with that being said, these are grown people that I'm hanging around. So I, took their advice and started dealing with addictions and couldn't stop.
How old were you at that time?
I was 14, maybe 15. And at the time, it had actually, as they said, as a temporary ease the pain, because when you're dealing with an addiction, you don't think about the things that you're going through. You just, all you're thinking and you're focusing on is chasing that high at the time. Me personally, my struggle lasted for a while and I ended up in and out of a juvenile detention center. Kept getting in trouble. And then finally the judge got tired of me one day and was like, little girl, I believe in you. And he wanted to see me do something better with myself. I got caught stealing. So I got caught stealing again. And I ended up at a Livingston Detention Center. And I'll never forget the staff. They were amazing there at the Juvenile Detention Center here in Springfield, Illinois. They really, really were. And I was pregnant at the time. And the judge did not want to send me to juvenile prison.
How old were you?
14, about 14 or 15. I'm not sure which one, but I was like 14 or 15 at the time. And he just believed in me. So he wanted them to do a mental health evaluation on me. And his plan for me was to get it together. He believed in me. He said, I see something in you. You just got to believe in yourself. So he decided that he was not the caseworker that I had at the time for Children Family Services. She was tired of me. Like, I ran her nerves down. Like, I kept running away. She had to keep coming to find me. And then when she couldn't find me, that's paperwork. So I understand why she was upset and why she was angry, because I was not the best client that she had, I'm sure. But the judge, he didn't want to send me to prison. So he told my caseworker to find me a placement again. And she was just like, no. And he was like, it was court ordered for her to find me a placement because I found out I was pregnant. He didn't want to send me away. So I beat the odds of going to juvenile prison at that time. And she took me to a place in Peoria, Illinois. And I ended up telling her I was hungry, and she unhooked my little stuff, feeding me the shackles and the handcuffs that they put on you. And on the way back from Peoria, I looked at her and told her, I'm not going back to jail. And she just was like, please don't do this. She was like, Miss Conley, like, you can't do this, you know. And I was pregnant at the time. My mind was telling me that I'm not going to have my baby in jail. That I'm not going to do. But the bad part about the decision that I made was I made things worse on myself. On the way back, we got in Springfield, and she ran every light she possibly could to get me back to the juvenile center. But unfortunately, the lights kept turning green. So she ended up with a stoplight. I don't know if you remember when they made the viaduct to the Pride John Hay homes. They had just made that viaduct over there. And she had to stop. And when she stopped, I jumped out that car with that juvenile detention center on and they shackles and they handcuffs. And I was gone for months. They finally caught me.
I assume you got rid of the shackles and the handcuffs.
I did, threw them in the dumpster. And soon as I got caught stealing and ended up in the juvenile detention center, the first thing he said is, Miss Conley, where's my shackles and handcuffs? I was like in the dumpster at the John Hay homes. That's all I could say. I ended up going into labor, and I had a beautiful son. My mom, before I had my son, my mom asked me, would I be willing to let her come? She found out I was pregnant to get custody of my son. And I'm like, no, you gave me away. You ain't finna give my baby away. That was my stinking thinking. And because of that, I had my son, and he was adopted because I kept running away. That's a whole nother story in its own. But we just reunited after 35 years. He's home. So I ended up going to court. And of course, the judge now is like, you're just not going to get it. So he decided to send me to IYC Warrenville Department of Corrections for Juveniles. And in my mind, I was so hurt. I was scared, young, just had a baby, and I'm just like, I'm really screwing my life up. I was a straight A student, ran track, cheerleaded, and I just let myself go. I let my challenges overcome me instead of overcoming my challenges when I ended up in the system, because a lot of people don't know the system can work for you, for those that end up in foster care if you let it, especially when you get to a certain age. If you follow suit what it is you need to do. I didn't do that. Ended up making things a lot worse for myself. So I'm in the juvenile detention center, and they're about to ship me off to Warrenville. In my mind, I'm going to get it together. I'm not finna be like I'm not coming back to prison. This is reality didn't set in. This is juvenile prison. When I got to the juvenile prison center, I remember going on the unit. My mom sent me a box of clothes because you could wear your clothes at the time. And I had a correctional officer come on to me and was telling me how pretty I was and asking me to write him letters. And he brung me tapes. Back then, they had little cassette tapes. They had music that you could buy headsets and listen to the music and stuff.
So this is a male correctional
officer at IYC Warrenville Juvenile Department of Corrections. Technically, by law, we all know that's not supposed to happen. At that age, I was dealing with a lot of rejection and abandonment. So I thought this man really liked me. I'm thinking he really cared about me. And so I willingly got involved with him. The bad part of that is everything that the judge told me that I needed to do to get back to my son, I didn't do. I didn't get a GED. I didn't go to parenting. I didn't do life skills. I didn't do anger management. I spent 8 hours a day at that desk talking to that man.
And all of those things were available to you.
Yes, they were.
But because you got involved distracted
Yes.
by this
correctional officer.
Yes. Who's coming on to you.
Yes.
As a juvenile.
Yes.
In custody.
Yes.
Taking advantage of you.
Yes.
You didn't take advantage of all these opportunities that had been laid out for you.
To me. No, sir. And they had a lot of them. And I wasn't required to do that much. His main focus was my GED. If I would have got a GED, then when I got out, I could have did what I had to do in parenting to get my son. Then it would open a door for me to get a job, because you can't get a job without a GED. So unfortunately, I didn't do that long of a time. I think I did about 6 to 8 months, got out.
Now, let me ask you a question. Had this correctional officer not done these things, was it your intention when you went there to participate in these programs?
Oh, yes. It was my whole intention to do what I had to do to better myself. Nobody in their right mind, I'm thinking, is going to go into any jail and come on to a correctional officer, because by law, you can get in trouble. Back in our days, that a lot of the women were held accountable. If you got caught messing with an officer, they would give you a year in SEG, a year across the board. You would be held accountable. I wanted to go home. So in my mind, I'm thinking that it's easier to do my time by just, playing around than doing what it is that I needed to do to better myself.
Now, was sex involved with this?
Touching and kissing, yes. Actual sexual intercourse in that prison, no. No.
Okay, so the so-called correctional officer derailed you from the course that would have corrected your course.
Totally. Because my intentions was to get in school, because I know I wasn't going to go to school in the streets. I knew that. So if I can get my GED, I'm good. That's what I'm thinking. I can get out, get a job. And at least that's one thing that I'd be done accomplished, because I knew I wasn't going to go back to school. I already became into the habit of being a runaway, so.
Now, the reason I bring that up is because this is going to turn out to be, as the story goes on, a recurring pattern.
Yes, sir.
Which you experienced and observed as an inmate in prisons as an adult, and which you observed as a correctional officer yourself later on.
Yes, sir.
Let me not stop you here. Continue on telling this story.
I ended up getting out. And because I did not do anything to better myself, I ended up doing the same thing that I did before I went. I ran away. I ended up homeless, staying with people that took me in, running in and out the stores, stealing, using, ended up pregnant again, got caught stealing again, and got sent back. So they sent me back to IYC Warrenville, and in there this time they have the co-ed dances where you can go to St. Charles. If you earn levels, you can go on dances and stuff. I made the levels. I think for the first few months he wasn't on my unit, so I was actually doing something with myself. I was on level 1. I was going to the dances, and then he sent message to me that he was going to be working in the school area. I need to sign up for school. So then once I seen him and he made his way, he found out I was back and he made his way over there. Of course, I was back hooked. Because mind you, I don't know if I stated that before, I started liking him. Like when you're young and someone comes on to you and they're showing you all this attention that you've never gotten, of course you get your feelings involved. So yeah, I'm kissing, touching. I was excited to see him. I was focused in the beginning, but once I saw him, I got distracted willingly, I will say that, and but I signed up for school. While at the school, I did graduate. I did get my GED because every day I never missed a day of school because I knew I would see him. So we would talk on my breaks and stuff like that. The kissing and the hugging and stuff continued. I also, upon getting released, exchanged information, went to meet him up at his apartment. When I got out. So I saw him just once after that. And Got out, had another baby, which I found out I was pregnant while I was there with my daughter.
While you were there.
While I was at the juvenile, the prison. They told me I was pregnant.
By the guard?
No. I was pregnant before. I got pregnant when I went home.
Okay.
So yeah, I got pregnant as I went home, but I didn't know I was pregnant because I was too busy running the streets and not paying attention to my body. But then I got there and they do pregnancy tests. They do everything because it's a co-ed facility. It's male and female. So they have to pregnancy test you. And I was pregnant. I was mad, but I was like, oh my goodness, here we go again, round 2. Nothing has been accomplished. The judge is hot. Like, I remember going into court before he sent me back and him telling me, like, if you don't get it, you're going to adult prison. And I had got so fed up. I was just like, whatever. I didn't even care anymore. Just send me back to jail because I knew I was cool. I knew he was there. I knew he was going to take care of me and I knew I was fine. So I went back and like I said, I was focused for a few months and then I got distracted because I ran into him again.
Just as a comment here, a lot of people focus on what needs to change about the system to prevent bad outcomes in people's lives that go to prison. Well, what you're talking about here, at least in the juvenile justice system, which in Illinois is a many ways a model in our country. Mm-hmm. And a lot of things have improved even since the time you were there.
Yes.
Dramatically. But even then, the system was set up to help you succeed, turn your life around. Yes. Resources were made available. All of this, it was on you. You made bad choices despite the cycle of bad consequences that flowed from those choices. Yes. Have I got it right?
Yes, sir. I don't know if you're aware, if you notice, I said willingly, because I'm big on accountability and I accept my part that I played in my actions. But as I got older and I got therapy, because as the story goes on, something very traumatic happened in prison, but I learned about accountability and I accepted full accountability for my actions, even though I was a juvenile. And the psychiatrist told me there's nothing that you could have done that would, first of all, they were manipulating you. They were violating you. They were using you. By law, can't no inmate consent to any sexual activity with a correctional officer. I don't care if you do say yes. By law, that means no. They know better. Now, you may not have known, but they know. So
now, the reason I brought up what I did is there may be people listening who are young, or there may be people listening who decide, I know somebody who's 14 years old and I see the same pattern happening to them, and they can learn from your experience. They may face exactly the same things where they have lots of opportunities to correct the course of their lives made available to them through the juvenile justice system, but they may face something, and in this case, of all things, it's a correctional officer who is preying upon you. You were vulnerable. Mm-hmm. And the correctional officer preyed upon your vulnerability, exploited you. And you became victimized not by the system, but by a correctional officer who in the system.
Yes. The best advice that I can give to anyone that is in the juvenile detention center or any corrections facility, say something. A lot of times sexual abuse survivors, when you're in that, going through that transition of people that are abusers mentally, sexually, physically, it doesn't matter, but especially in the penal system, it's not okay to be quiet. And it is okay to say something. And they have precautions that you can take, that grievances, you can write somebody. There's different things that I could have done, but I chose not to because at the time I was looking for love in all the wrong places. And it found me.
You were a juvenile.
I was a kid. That was not love. That was lust. And it was wrong. So I try to tell those that are in a juvenile detention center, This is your opportunity. If you made it to the juvenile detention center and you ain't dead, and you made it there, that's your first opportunity right there to get it right. And you can. Not all correctional officers are bad. I want to make sure I make that point out, because not all of them are bad. You have a lot of good correctional officers. Livingston Detention Center, when I was there, those officers were great. Sangamon County Jail here in Springfield, Illinois, all of those officers up there are great. Still to this day, 20, 30 years later, they're all still great. So not everybody is a bad seed. But when it does come, before you allow yourself to get caught up into something, because I promise you, it's not love. It's wrong. No matter what it sounds like, no matter how good it sounds, it's wrong. By law, no inmate can consent to it. So the best thing that, and the encouraging words that I give to all juveniles or anyone that I talk to that's an at-risk youth, you say something, you tell somebody. And if that person doesn't listen to you, you go to the next person until somebody listens to you. And eventually somebody will. There's people that you can write. There's different acts of different things that you can do, and you don't have to be afraid. I did encounter some retaliation at the end, but when it's all said and done, it's about you. They have different things that they can do in the penal system to protect you, protective custody units, and they work for your benefit, for your good. So my biggest advice is just to not be scared to say something. It's just, the problem is people don't say nothing. I didn't say anything. I didn't want to say anything. I didn't know. Well, I'm not going to say I didn't want to. I just didn't know to say anything, because you think in your mind that you're going to get in trouble. Take that chance. Say something. Because when that judge sent you there, he sent you there to save you from doing something that probably could have caused you more hurt and harm than anything. So the goal is, in juvenile, as well as adult, they have programs, they have school, they have counseling, they have therapy, they have treatment, they have everything that you need to better yourself as an individual. And unfortunately, I hate to have to say this, but a lot of times when I talk to people, I tell them it's all about you. Don't worry about what's going on in there. If somebody, a correctional officer, or it could be other inmates, you have to sometimes just, do what you got to do. They call it snitching. It is what it is, because your goal is to do what you have to do to better yourself so you don't become that repeat offender. If you don't get the assignment and you don't get the lesson the first time, you'll go back and you'll go back. I didn't get the assignment. I didn't get the lesson. I took my juvenile pattern of behaviors into adult. Every time, that second time I got out, I did what? I went back to stealing. I went back to using. I went back to doing those things that I was familiar with. And the reason why I did that is because I didn't get the lesson. I didn't better myself. I didn't rehabilitate myself. I didn't do anything to make myself better. I spent 8 hours a day at a desk talking to a man who really didn't want to be, probably had a wife at home. A lot of them, they get involved with inmates to pass their time. It's a job to hurry them, get through the days or whatever, or for little free feels or whatever it is, little sexual desires that they have. But my message to correctional officers as well is, when you put yourself in situations like this, you don't know what you're dealing with. You don't know what that child's been through. So you're putting yourself, as well as that you're causing that inmate more harm than you're helping them, for real. Because the goal is, when you send someone to prison, is to correct the behavioral patterns that they have. But if they keep getting distraction and getting caught up with the correctional, and it goes on a lot. Unfortunately, I went to the adult prison, was in intake, and the first thing that an officer did was told me how pretty I was, and could he see my boobs, he would give me some cigarettes. And mind you, then when you have habits and you are in a cell, of course you're gonna flash, you're gonna do whatever, and sooner or later this becomes a pattern. I ended up doing things that I would still say it's selling your body in prison. If you ask me, I never prostituted on the outside, but that's still a form of prostitution on the inside, if you want to be technical about it, because I was doing things and they were giving me things, so I've had officers send me money orders. I even moved in with a correctional officer one time when I got out. Actually, it was two of them that I ended up living with down the line. So I never got anything from going to prison. With the gateway, the parenting, the life skills, culinary arts, they had nail classes then, they had cosmetology, they had all these different opportunities for me to do something and be somebody successful. I wasn't given a chance. And I wasn't given a chance because every prison I went to, Lincoln, from Warrenville, Lincoln, Logan, Decatur, Dixon, Dwight. Actually, Dixon is the only one an officer never said anything to me at, but Dwight. So it was just a repeated cycle. And instead of me standing up for myself and saying no, I got involved. It was the norm. It's the easiest way to do your time. This is what I'm thinking in my mind, because at this time, I'm not healthy. I'm not healthy at all.
Well, let's talk about that, because here, to summarize, you've gone to a juvenile, I'll call it juvenile prison, twice.
Yes.
And as you said earlier, then you ended up going to adult prison 7 times total. You're in this cycle.
Every 2 years.
Every 2 years.
Every 2 years, I went right back.
And what were you going back for?
Stealing, boosting.
And why were you boosting and stealing?
Drug habit.
And during this time, the solution to getting out of this cycle would have been to get out of the cycle of the drugs upon release and drugs in prison.
Yes.
Tell us about drugs in prison.
I remember the first time I went to prison, I was at the White Correctional Center, and I will never forget, I was in the cell, and my roommate, we was like 18, she pulled out some drugs and a toilet paper roll and got high off of cocaine with a toilet paper roll. I had never seen nothing like that in my life, but that's what she used to get high with. And it's sad to say, but things have changed a lot from my understanding with the female prisons. I'm not sure. It's been over 15, 17, 18, 19 years since I've been in jail. But I know back then, it's a lot of drugs. Even today, it's still a lot of drugs in the prison system. I have not worked in the females, but I've worked in the males prison, and I saw more dope there than you wouldn't believe. But
can I interrupt here?
Yes.
Mr. Drainer, let me turn to you. You've been in prison.
Yes.
Is anything that she's saying about the availability of drugs and in prison and alcohol in prison, is that true in your experience?
Yeah, it's very true. As she said, it's more easy to get drugs and stuff in prison than it is
outside.
out here in what we call the free world. Some of my experience with being in prison, here I am, the head cook in federal prison, and here I am. At this time, it's early in my incarceration. I will never forget this. I get a job as a head cook in the prison. Now, I become somebody very important in drugging. What do you mean in drugging? I'm talking about helping people to make alcohol, helping people to get the stuff they need to use drugs and stuff, because I'm the cook. Yeah. So in prison, when you the chef or the number one cook, everybody need you. They have to buy what we call the dough and stuff from you. The dough that we make the early morning biscuit and stuff with have what we call yeast in it. And they would make the alcohol, but in order for the alcohol to formalize itself, they need that yeast to make it. Now, as far as the cocaine and that stuff go, there are certain things they need, like when we open those cans and stuff, they needed the can to smoke the drugs and stuff. So there's a lot of way, man. Some of the smarter druggists, smarter people are in prison. Whether it's state prison or federal prison, yes, there's a lots of drugs, lots of alcohol and stuff inside of the prison.
Okay, so the alcohol was made through a process. It's moonshine.
Moonshine.
They were
There you
moonshining in prison.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
But what about the other drugs? Cocaine? They're not making cocaine. That comes from,
No. The cocaine come through the prison
Guards.
come through visitation.
Guards.
My girlfriend come to visit me. Me and her get the kiss at the beginning of the visit. She might have it in a balloon. So when we kiss, I get it from her. And then when I go back to my cell, I use the restroom and it come out of my rear end. And now it's inside. Now I can make money or use it.
But can I say something about that?
Yeah.
The most convenient way and the most popular way is correctional officers. If you think about it, COVID came out. When COVID came out, they stopped visitation. When they stopped visitation, they stopped physical contact. Why were people and how were people still getting high? That's staff.
Good point.
That's staff. And if you think about it, the correctional facility that I worked in, which is in Kansas, we found over 69 cell phones. That's staff. I had a situation when they called me a rookie. When I first got there, I was told, you take your job too serious. I took my job serious because I've been there. I've done that. And I want to see these young men get rehabilitated. I want to see these young men be successful. Get the assignment. Don't come back. This is not some place that you want to call home. And a lot of people, I think I've shared this before, it doesn't matter how much time man gives you. If you get that on a spiritual note, I feel like if you get to a personal relationship with your higher power and you get to that point to where you figure out why you're there and you correct those behaviors that led you to be there, I believe a door and opportunity will open for some people to come home. But you can't go in there doing the same thing in prison that you did in the world. And unfortunately, a lot of them do because that's what they know. And this is the problem that I have with the system because there's no accountability for us correctional officers. If a person comes to visit you and I search you and you have marijuana in your pocket, I have to call the police. You're going to jail. You're not going to be able to come back into this facility. Now, if our staff gets caught, then they get to resign. There's no jail. Not all, but majority of the time because they don't want to bring that heat on the prison system. So what they do, they cover it up.
Let's go back. You were going through prison, cycling through. Somehow that cycle got broken. You broke out of that. Tell us the story. What made the difference?
What happened with me was, and my condolences to the family, and I hate to even really bring this back up, but in 2000, I was in Dwight Correctional Facility. There's a lady that worked there, Valerie Wilson, beautiful. She was a lieutenant. And her and a new officer that worked there, Dunford, they lost their lives. Their lives were taken by a colleague of their own who also was married to somebody that worked there. Miss Wilson was married to somebody that worked there. So it was called a love triangle. It was all bad. Like it was really, really messy. There was an officer there who was messing with inmates who actually got caught messing with an inmate. His wife left him. So he started dating another officer. She found out. So she left him. She started dating another officer. Well, he ended up going to her home and murdering her and the guy that he caught her in the bed with.
And this is all public record.
All public records. And Kankakee, Illinois, 2000. Wake up call for me. If you will take the lives of your own colleagues, I'm nobody. So after that, all bets are off. Like, I don't want no dealings with nobody. I'm done. There was a correction officer that at the time that, was talking to me, and it hadn't went that far yet, but I just shut it down. I just didn't want any more violence. It's time for me to get focused. And at the time, I had just got back and I had just had a baby. So I had a little boy this same year. I think I had my son in July and the murders happened in August of 2000. So we had an officer that came on the new. He used to try to holler at me and I could not ever since the murders happened, it just like my stomach just turns. It's just like, leave me alone. You know what I'm saying? I'm done. I'm literally done. And he would make comments and I would just ask him, please leave me alone. Like, I'm not interested. I'm good. And I guess he probably had heard about me and some of the other girls who've messed with officers before, because they know who to target and who not to. They know who gonna tell on them and who ain't. They know who getting money on their books and who not. They know they do mail call, so they know. Back then they used to stamp it and tell you what you get, $20. Oh, they only sending you $20. I got you. I saying they sending you in different names hundreds of dollars. So yeah, you got the officers that took good care of females in there. So this particular time, this officer, I was a porter, and he kept telling me I need to come out and do my detail. And I'm looking at him like, my detail is done. I knew you was going to be the officer, so I did it before you got here. So I go to my room, and I lock up, and he's like, no, you need to come out here and do your detail. And I'm thinking, he's just being a jerk. Like, I just was really getting irritated. But he gave me a direct order. When an officer gives you a direct order, you have to follow what they tell you to do. He says, I'm giving you a direct order to come out of your room and go and clean and do the detail. So I'm like, all right, whatever. So I come out of my room, and he has me go in a toxic closet. There he sexually violated me, made me stand there, pull down my pants, and fondle me. And it just was the worst feeling and experience in the world. Mentally, that I've never been raped in the world or nothing like that. You know what I'm saying? So to have to go into prison and go through something like that, it's just like, who do you tell? What do you do? So mind you, I'm dealing with this on my own. I'm scared to say something. They just took the lives of 2 other officers. Who's going to believe me? I'm nobody. I'm here. I'm a thief, an addict. Ain't nobody going to believe me. They let alone care. But me as a person, I have feelings. I have emotions. I'm dealing with something now. This is traumatizing me because I'm just mentally just crying. I'm depressed. I'm scared. I didn't know what to do. I ended up going back in my room when I finished and he finished doing what he did. I was dishonest, but I told the officer that I had a problem with my roommate. They sent me to PCU.
What's that?
Protective custody unit. Once I got over there, I called my godmom at the time, and I told her what happened. And she said, no, I'll be up there in the morning, and you need to say something. So I told the warden. I asked, could I please speak to the warden? Warden came down on the unit. I stopped the warden. First operator, I kept saying, give me a sign if the warden comes. So finally,
You're saying that to who?
God. Like, I'm praying, like, Lord, because I was scared. Like, I've never been in, mind you, the other times I was a willing participant. Now I'm not willing. I have not been willing. I don't want you touching me. I'm really trying to get it. I done been here 6 times. Like, it's time to get it right this time. So I eventually tell somebody, and she told me, you sure you didn't want it? And I'm like, huh? I told the warden that he had touched me. He made me go on toxic closet. I told her everything that happened. And she said, are you sure you didn't want it? What did you do to him? Was he sending you money? Was you writing him? And I'm looking at you like, are you kidding me right now? So I called my mom back, and she was like, I'll be there in the morning. She came and rung the state police with her. And the state police came up there, and they wanted to know what happened. And I told them. And so the warden said, well, I want a polygraph test done on her. I was willing to take it. I took it down, passed it with flying colors. And they asked some of the weirdest questions. Did you want him to touch you? Had you done it? I remember one of the questions was, did I ask him for anything? Was he sending me money? Did you sexually do anything to him first? Just no matter how they flipped the question, I passed it. The warden was upset. I was sent back to my unit. She came down there and she says, if I find out that you antagonized her or something, she was saying that she would see to it that I did a lot of time. I told that too. My mom, I told that. She contacted the state police officer and told that too. So while in protective custody unit from this correctional officer, he ended up working a double. And I guess second shift didn't tell him about me being in protective custody from him, because I finally told the truth of why I wanted to be in protective custody. And he worked on the unit. And he was like, what are you doing down here? Talking to me over the microphone. And I'm like, are you kidding me right now? And I knew his voice. Like, I'm just scared. I'm paranoid. Because mind you, they didn't just kill 2 of their other officers. Like, all this stuff is in your head. Like, is this man going to do something to me? Like, are you kidding me right now? So I get my phone call and I call my godmom, and she run her little butt right back curling. Like, mom, she run her little butt right back up there. And she contacted that state police officer, and he came up there and he asked them what's going on. Why was he able to have any contact with her? And that's when she said, well, he worked second shift. He said, pack her stuff. He put me in the car and he drove me to Lincoln Correctional Center and dropped me off. The state police officer did. That was working on the case.
Good for him.
Yes, but I get there and guess what? Here comes another officer. How pretty you are. I want you working over here. I got, he done got a hold of somebody and put me working over there where he work at. This is an older guy. And I'm like, oh my God. I went with the flow. I just started talking to him because right now it's you in a lose-lose situation. You don't know mentality. Now I'm so messed up mentally that I didn't know, like, if I say something. Mind you, this officer got arrested. He did get arrested. I can back up a little bit. Sorry about that. Through the investigation, he finally was arrested. He got arrested. We went to court. The case was heard. It's all public records in Livingston County. He was acquitted of the charges because I didn't have any actual physical evidence. That's what they were looking for.
Well, in a criminal case, the burden of proof is on the state, the government, is beyond a reasonable doubt.
Yes.
And if it's a he said, she said, 50-50, well, that's not enough.
It doesn't weigh out, it doesn't pan out. So, and I knew that. But my purpose of saying something is because I never experienced that before. And I didn't want nobody else to have to go through that.
Well, let me interject. What I was talking about there is a criminal case. That doesn't mean that the Department of Corrections can't take administrative action based on a lesser standard, based on your report and just all of the circumstances and talking to the people. So they come to some conclusion. They can intervene without facing the beyond a reasonable doubt standard of a criminal prosecution.
And they did. He was terminated. They knew he did it. Other female staff said he had been sexually harassing them since he started.
An end was put to that conduct by him because you stood up for yourself and said something.
Yes.
It had come to that.
Yes.
Now, during this process, up to this point, you had mentioned that you prayed to God.
Yes.
Does religion play any part in this transformation that was happening with you?
Yes, it does. Is it okay if I say a scripture?
Absolutely.
There's a scripture, Romans 8:28, which is the name of my book. It's called What Satan Meant for Evil, God Meant for Good. And the scripture is, all things work together for the good to those who love the Lord and are called according to his purpose. And I have to say that all the bad, even though I went through a lot of bad experiences through the prison system, like I said, with sexual abuse, because it's sexual abuse. Technically, they call it custodial sexual misconduct. It's a class 3 felony. Can no inmate consent to it? It's just been a repeated history of that. I willingly got involved, like I said, with another officer in Lincoln after I left there, scared, didn't know what to do. But it caused me to have a more intimate relationship with my higher power, which I choose to call God, because I now have nobody to depend on but him. It's like, I've tried. My mom did all she could do. The system's done. Well, not the system. I'm talking about the state police officer. He was awesome. He did the best he could do. So I'm still making unfortunate bad decisions because I keep coming back to prison. So it's like, okay, so if you can't change yourself, you do what? You reach out to a higher power and I prayed and I asked God, like, I need you to change me because I'm stuck in a pattern of a lifestyle that I don't want anymore. Like, mentally, it was really tearing me up. Like, it killed my self-esteem. It made me more sexual, promiscuous, which was that was something I never dealt with in the world. I stole clothes. That's it. That's all. Men would try to holler at me. I'd brush them off and keep on going because right now I'm my own stuff. I ain't have time to be dealing with no man. So it's like, I don't want to depend on these men anymore. I trust you. So I start reading my word and I start finding scripture. Philippians 4:19. He says, what? I'll supply all of your needs according to your riches and glory through Christ. I got you. So I'm standing on these promises. Okay, I'm not finna mess with none of these men no more. Lord, I need you to intervene. And stuff started happening personally and around me. His girlfriend that worked there started noticing things and started writing stuff up. And he got removed off of my unit. And a female ended up working on my unit. So that stopped some of that. I'm starting to go to church, starting to do a little more soul searching spiritually, I guess you would say. And
going to church in prison?
In prison. Yeah, I started going to church in prison. I started fasting in prison. I started seeing things change in my life. I started feeling the desire to want to do something to better myself. I started taking a life skills class. And then I got shipped out of there and they shipped me to Decatur. Got to Decatur. I was excited because, mind you, I had a baby. New baby. They got this program called the Reunification Wing where they let women keep their kids on the weekend. Conley got picked for that. I'm excited. God's moving. I see where his hand is in this. And the guy got my information and I shared information with him, honestly, before I left. He did stay in contact with me and I ended up moving with him when I got out of jail, unfortunately. Yes.
Which guy?
In the Lincoln Correctional Facility. He picked me up.
The one that you got fired?
The one no. That was that man. I never, no. He's deceased now from, I don't know what happened, but no. This was the new guy when I ended up going to Lincoln. As soon as I got there, this officer came on to me, the older guy. Put me over there to work with him as a porter and just, you know.
I thought you said you were done with all that.
I did, but when you here's the thing. Temptation was strong. And then also I was scared. I really didn't want to be involved with him. But at that time, it's just like they was killing their own kind. Like, so, you know, if you would take the lives of two of your own people, I ain't nobody. So it was just go with the flow. Do what you got to do to get out of here. And just play along. You know, it's just, to me, it was more easier to just follow suit than to be stressed out, depressed, writing up everybody, telling on everybody because I was making things worse for myself. I wrote grievances. And this is why I say it's okay to speak up. I've wrote in Springfield. I wrote grievances. I'm sure they got stacks of grievances like this. But did anything change? No, it didn't. It made things worse for myself because of the officers that I worked with. Now I had a name. Oh, that's the girl that had, I'll reroute that. I got sent to Decatur Correctional Facility. Loved it. I was super excited to be there. I'm on a wing with my baby and somebody recognizes me that took me to court. You that girl, because he was working at the facility and transferred over to Decatur. That's that girl that had that officer arrested in Dwight. So now don't nobody want to fool with me. I'm talking about like, you that girl that had that officer arrested. So now, because a lot of the officers down there, they mess with inmates sexually. They do. So then I had an officer there. I was depressed. Just, I thought he was cool because he had a spiritual side. And he would talk to me and he would encourage me. And then he would motivate me. And then he ended up having sex with me in the jail, in the prison. That's the first prison I actually had, a Thanksgiving. Everybody went to chow. Had sex in prison with this guard in Decatur Correctional Facility. Yes. I dealt with a lot of retaliation. That's why I just kind of gave up. Like, they got me kicked off the wing. I was told I reported something about a situation that I had. And once I reported it, they told me to go to the healthcare unit. I go to the healthcare unit. Next thing I know, they put me on suicide watch. They knew I had a visit. I'm not trying to kill myself. Like, what's going on? I didn't know. So finally, it's just this big old circle of get back. I'm no longer on the unit with my baby. This is ever since they found out who I was. So I decided I need to see a psychiatrist. And it was a psychiatrist there that talked to me, that woke me up to I just was open with her and honest and just told her everything. All the officers, everything. And she did her little digging and her little searching, and she had to report about the officer from Lincoln Correctional Facility. So they came and pulled me out, talked to me again. They wanted to know. Now they're getting more involved. Too much is going on. They lost two of their officers. You know, they're trying to intervene now and make some things happen.
Yeah, there are people in the Department of Corrections. In fact, most of the people in the Department of Corrections would be horrified by this story.
Yes.
And want to do something to correct it.
Yes. So upon saying something and talking to the officers and talking to the state police officer and stuff, and he reassured me that I was going to be okay, that nothing was going to happen to me, but he needed to know all the people that were involved from this whole journey. And I told him everybody's name. 7 officers resigned. I think it was like 6 or 7 that resigned. They were told if you were sexually involved with Miss Conley, either you let us know or they were going to bring charges on them. And they resigned. I don't think it was 7. I think it was 4, 5, something like that. I don't remember exactly. After that happened, and I started dealing with the psychiatrist, and she was telling me, she said, Miss Conley, you're going to have to start standing up for yourself. If you want to see things change, you got to change. I was scared. Like, when you become a part of the Department of Corrections, you're theirs. Like, every little thing you do, you're dealing with officers who will quickly tell you they will take your time. Like, you do something to pee them off, they'll write you some tickets and you can lose time behind that. Like, back in the day when inmates I spoke that before, the inmates got the time. They got a year in SIG, a year across the board. You'd be surprised how many women lost their out day for being sexually involved with correctional officers. You should never lose your out day for being involved with a sexual correctional officer. He should be held accountable, he or she, because it's both sexes that do it. So I'm out of the system now. I ended up going home with a correctional officer. They come to my house. This is how I know they're getting involved. He found out that I told, and now I got to move out of his house. So he put me in a house, another apartment in Decatur, Illinois.
The correctional officer
did, yeah. So I moved out of his house and moved into my own apartment. They came to my house. IA did, Internal Affairs. Want to know what's going on.
Department of Corrections,
yes, they did.
Internal Affairs.
They sure did. Department of Corrections, Internal Affairs. They came to my house. This is when I was thinking to myself, all these prayers is finally coming to surface. Like, because believe it or not, a lot of women get involved, but they don't want to be involved. We do it because, for one, it's a form of, goes both ways. Some of them don't have people to take care of them. So they figure this is the easy, you're going to send me money. Nobody wants to struggle in jail. So they're sending me money. They're taking care of me. But I know it's a lot of women whose intention is to do what they got to do so they don't come back. I'm going to say at least 85% of them are distracted from correctional officers.
Distracted.
Because that's all it is. It's not love.
Derailed.
It's derailed and distracted.
Exploited.
And my personal beliefs is, if the system, not all correctional facilities are bad. I'm not here to bash DLC. I still believe there's hope. But I still believe that rehabilitation starts with the officer. I think I shared this in a video. This comes from my personal experience as working as a correctional officer. When you take that position or you take that job as a correctional officer, you need to do, before you do it, to know what is your intentions. Because you're dealing with people that's dealing with a lot of stuff. And in order for the repeat offender rate to go down, our goal is to what? To rehabilitate them, to see them find out what it is inside of them that they want to do, and to help them to accomplish these goals to be better. Get the help that they need, whether it's mental health, whether it's substance abuse. There's so many awesome programs in the prison system, but they're not being utilized because too many people are spending time selling dope, getting high, having sex on TikTok, on Facebook, Instagram. This is all you see now. There's no accountability. Correctional officers, it's not the warden's fault neither. I'm going to say administration. I don't blame administration because, see, first of all, administration gives us, I keep saying us, I'm not a correctional officer anymore, but when I got hired on as a correctional officer, administration's job is to control the facility to the best of their ability. There's only so much administration can do. Because mind you, that's what they have line staff for. That's what they hire us for. They hire us in faith that we're going to do what we're supposed to do. Character and integrity, I'm big on that. The right thing, whether they're looking or they're not. Unfortunately, there's a lot of correctional officers that they hire that are there for just the money. You got some that's been there for years that are just set in their ways. There's so many officers that are friends with inmates. That's not what we got. When you take that position, you're not there to be their friend. You're there to be security. You're there to make it a safe place. You're there to try to help, to allow somebody to use your God-given gifts that are in you to help somebody be a better person. This is what I would think, my own personal opinion as a correctional officer. When I took a job as a correctional officer, I took that position because I wanted to see things change in the system. I want to see young men and women go in there and do what they need to do. And I'm going to let you know. They would always say, well, Miss C, you don't understand, not knowing that I do understand. I've been there. I've been on both sides of the fence more times than you know. They never knew that. But I didn't tell them that neither because it wasn't my job to tell them that. Even the officers that I work with, I didn't tell them that.
Okay, so let me interject here. Mr. Joyner. At the beginning of this, I mentioned that you've started a program here in Springfield, Shifting into New Gear, SING.
Yes.
Helping people when they're released from prison transition successfully back to community and family life. A lot of those are women.
Yes.
Have you heard stories like this before?
Not to this level, but I have been, especially from a federal side, in the federal system, there are a few women that I have met that have entered into the program, told me how they used to let me and the God do things to them just because they had no family support. That was their way of getting along. They wasn't nobody sending them no money. The so-called boyfriend that they took the case for, this what rattled me the most. The three women, I won't call their name, but I had three women that in my program, they took the case for their boyfriend. He told them, hey, if y'all take the case, y'all get less time. Yeah. Y'all women, you know what I'm saying? I'm a man. They gonna hang me. So they agreed to take the time with the promise that he was gonna take care of them the whole bit. Come find out he did it for about 3 months, 6 months at the longer, and they never heard no more. So the minute, like Ms. Conley said, a God told them how good they look, this and that, and you're vulnerable at this time, believe it or not.
Well, they're vulnerable before they went to prison.
Exactly.
Because they agreed to plead guilty to a crime they did not commit. Because the guy who committed the crime is exploiting them.
Exactly.
And using them so that he can escape accountability, and they end up going to prison instead of him going to prison, because even though they weren't in prison experiencing what you're doing, it sounds to me like they were experiencing even when they're out on the street, when they're outside of prison. Yes. Same sort of thing of being exploited and not waking up. Now, at some point, you did wake up, and there was a spiritual dimension to this. There was a psychiatrist that was involved in this. There was a state police agent who was involved in this. Yes. There were your godmother was involved in this. Okay, so you, at some point, something happened, and you transitioned from that life to becoming a correctional officer.
How that happened, I still do not know to this day. I would say it was definitely a spiritual intervention, because I moved to Kansas, and the correctional facility, I ended up applying for a job, and I was like, I can't get no job doing this. And the lady told me, she's like, we are so short-staffed. She said, look, just don't mark you have any felonies. We'll see if something pops up. She said, when's the last time you've been in trouble? I said, oh, it's been over 15 years. And she's like, well, we'll see if you're good or not. Just leave it alone. And I'm like, okay. So I did as I was told. Because first time I applied, she kept reaching out to me, and I kept ignoring her because I knew I can't be no correctional officer. I've been, even though, I haven't been in trouble forever, but then she just, I said, well, I've been in jail before. I have felonies for stealing, She's like, how long? We're so short of staff, just don't put anything down. She was like, you've made me aware of it, and we'll just see what happens. So I continued to apply. I got hired and blew my head back. I'm like, I'm going to be a correctional officer. I'll be darned. Like, are you kidding me right now? But it was like this, even today, I would still love to do it. But it was my passion because I now get the opportunity to help somebody. And It's a few good correctional officers where I worked at, but then you have more bad C's than you had good C's there. And a lot of them were just been there so long. So once you've been there for so long, you don't care about nothing. I got 4 more years to retirement. I was always told, you take this job too serious. I do. Because when you take a job for the government, especially as a correctional officer dealing with inmates, my thing is they trust you. Look at all, you are accountable for all of these people. We're accountable. They hired us to do a job, and your job is to be security. Your job is to be the best person that you can be as a correctional officer, professionally, not using nonsense. And I say that because you're required to do 30-minute checks. I do my checks. Lost a lot of weight. I missed that job. But I had a lot of people say, why, you ain't got to do that every 30 minutes. I said, technically, the warden told us to make sure we're doing our checks. In training, they tell us to make sure you're doing your checks. In training, they tell you to make sure that you're not documenting anything that's not what you're supposed to be documenting. So if you write down that you did a check and you didn't do a check, that's falsified documents. So I'm going to keep doing my rounds, and hopefully you're going to help me because I'm in a male prison. It's a big prison. Majority of the time they didn't. They sat there. They're on their phone. Phones shouldn't even be able to be brought in the prison system, but they are. Correctional officers get to bring phones. The warden that they had at the time, which they got rid of because he was making a change. He was making it more safe for the facility. This warden, he intervened. His goal was to see that the officers and the inmates were safe and they were secure. So his goal was to see what could he do to change things up to make this happen. So he started moving people around. People didn't like that. There's certain people that are on certain units that need to stay on this unit because this is their unit where they get down at. Then you have these officers that didn't like to be flipped and flopped around neither. So my problem that I had is because when I come to work and I do my shifts, I do regular checks like I'm supposed to. I'm not going to document something that I did not do. I'm not doing that. Then my biggest problem that I had with the correctional facility that I work with is I was a trainee, and there's people, I had worked in SEG, and there's people passing stuff, officers. Now, I tell the officer, we're not supposed to pass stuff. And he tells me to just mind my business.
Passing stuff like what?
Clothing items, trays. You're not supposed. The reason they tell us don't pass stuff is because here, I'm a firm believer in this. And this is where I fell out with one of the sergeants.
Okay,
there.
First of all, what does pass mean? What are you talking about?
Passing means is I'm giving you something that somebody else is giving me to give to you. Me, as a correctional officer, I wasn't passing anything. I never started that. And I told one of the officers that I work with, who is a sergeant, and she got really irritated because she said, who am I to tell her how to do her job? But then she saw why I said what I said at the end when we had inmates setting mattresses on fire. We were taking some gentlemen out to the yard. I do not pass stuff, which means if you have something to get from another inmate, you have to do that on your own time. That's not my job. Now, respectfully, I take you to the yard where you're supposed to go, and respectfully, I bring you back and take you to your room. I do not do nothing for one that I am not going to do for the next. I don't open them doors. And I'm going to tell you why they should never be opened as a correctional officer. Because when you come in there and you doing stuff for inmates and you do it for one and you don't do it for the other, it's a problem. Then it's a problem when you do something for an inmate and then today you're having a bad day and you decide I'm not doing it. And then now they mad because you've been doing it. So now it's another problem. So how's the best way to solve that problem? Don't start it.
Right.
Do your job. They hired you to do a job. So I had a young man who we were coming back from the yard, but I see the sergeant taking this young man to get some ice. So the other guy wanted some ice. So I'm going to take him to get some ice. She said, what are you doing? I'm taking him to get some ice. No, he needs to go back to his room. I said, well, he said, why I can't get no ice? He getting some ice. She said, because I said so. I said, well, unfortunately, I'm sorry to say, but that's not right. Why would you let him get some ice and he can't get no ice? This is where the problem comes in at. Now, I didn't say that around the inmate. I waited professionally and said something to her. This is where the problem come in at. I told him, I said, just for me, would you just do me one favor, young man? He said, Missy, what is that? Don't say nothing to her. Let me walk you to your room, because he was finna go off. I'll get you some ice and I'll bring it back to you. Y'all can have ice. Just give me a second. I want to get my own ice. She said you can't go get it. She's my sergeant. Would you do that for me? Yes, ma'am. I got you. He took him in his room. I uncuffed him. Went and got him some ice. Took it back. I asked anybody else, did they want ice? Of course they did. I rounded up the ice thing and got everybody's ice. He and she got upset and said something to me. And I professionally told her why I felt like what you did was wrong. Because you're doing something for one. Now everybody want ice. They beating on the door. Oh, no, I want to come out and get some ice. So they're setting mattresses on fire. She had me removed off the unit. She told them, come remove her. She's disrupting how she do things. Okay. I don't got a problem with that. They moved me off the unit. Then I hear all these codes and I'm like, what's going on? They said A2. They said mattresses on fire over there. See, they knew when I worked SEG or any other, they knew when Conley was working. Because first of all, there's 12-hour shifts. Ain't no reason why your paperwork or anything else left from last night should be coming into the day shift when you got 12 hours to do it. But they spend most of their time talking about who they didn't slept with, what they didn't did the night before, all of these things that are irrelevant to your job. Pay attention. Corrections is a serious, I think anyone that takes that job needs to be serious about what it is that you're there to do. Administration hires you because they need people that's going to hold this down. That ain't our job. Their job is to run it, but they hire us in faith that we're going to hold it down. And how do we do that? We do it as a team. We work together, not against each other. We don't let inmates turn us away from each other. We don't do stuff for one you're not going to do for the other. And I think if more correctional officers were going there with that mindset to do your job to the best of your ability as a team, you would have less riots. You would have less fights. You would have less murders. We had a young man hang himself in his cell. Had you done your checks, you would have caught that. How long does it take for a person to hang yourself? If they're on suicide watch, you're on them every 5-10 minutes. That was enough time. You didn't do your job. We had an inmate kill his cellmate. How can you kill somebody with a pencil or whatever he used and not hear that? If you're doing your checks, you probably could have caught it. But you can't tell me you didn't hear nobody fighting. Cells echoes. The problem that I had with that is when I came back to work and I heard about it, because I liked it too. All the inmates, I like them. But the words that I got from the officer was, that's 2 sex offenders we ain't got to worry about.
And that's it. Just before we get ready to close this out, just to confirm what you're saying, I want people to be clear on this. That same proposition that you was getting as a lady from men God, there are women God that do the same to men. I just want to make that real clear.
It's very clear.
Based on me being in federal prison, I didn't cross the line, but there are some things that mean this one lady, she was my supervisor, that she would do for me. This woman would help me. I'm not ashamed to say this, nigga, because it's my past. She would, every day, me and her, she would call me in the office, right? And say, hey, LJ, my name LJ in prison. You called me off every day, and she would be like me, her filling out paperwork. But we wasn't filling out no paperwork. She was just telling me about her husband, how he don't give her a time. She want this and this and that. So, but what I was doing with her was this right here. Hey, we were taking stuff. I would have other inmate as mule. A mule is a person that transferred the stuff to the prison that you be ordered to get taken to the unit to sell, right?
That's
So this woman would let us take cases of vegetable, chicken, all this stuff, and we would never get stopped. She made sure we never got stopped. This is how I lived my first 3-4 years in prison, because it made her feel good just having somebody she could share and tell about her life, man.
And unfortunately, that happens a lot. And this is exactly why I said what I said, that when you take a job as a correctional officer, why are you doing this? And then you also have to know there's red flags. I saw a lot of red flags with a young lady in training. She was never there on time. We did a walkthrough and one of the inmates said, yeah, I want her to work over here. And she started laughing and smiling. They saw it. They didn't care. She ended up being walked off for bringing in cell phones. But you could have avoided that in the beginning. First of all, why would officers give inmates cell phones? You're selling inmates you're selling inmates cell phones for $2,500. All this money, because it's all about money. Mm-hmm. They sell tobacco for Cash App for tons of money.
Mm-hmm.
They
How does the transaction happen? Because the
inmate will give that officer a number to reach out to his family, and they will Cash App that man. Yes,
exactly.
they do too much. But here's my thing. I just really wanted to say this. This is why it's so important as far as be careful. You have to warning signs when you're doing. They have a video that they show. And
who's they?
Department of Corrections. There's a video that they show about manipulation, how inmates and officers link up. Stop showing that video because you're glorifying what it is that for one, it's not showing them or teaching them anything. All it's doing is putting a seed in them on how to be corrupt. I think that when a person goes through the training to be a correctional officer, there needs to be some fear there. You need to change some of these laws. Let them know if you are caught messing, we ain't talking about he say, she say. If we find out that you have been sexually involved with an inmate, they need to start registering them. Sex offenders. That's rape. Can't no inmate consent to that. Accountability. And the stronger they start, the more they're losing so many officers to this. And you wonder why you're short staffed? Because there's no accountability. I think quality overrides quantity any day. I'd rather have a good officer that I know that can run this unit, that's going to hold this one down, than 3 or 4 that's going to sit here and play just to keep some time, just to keep some heads. What do they call it? Keep heads on.
You have as part of your audience here probably some people who are either caught up in this cycle that you've talked about, being exploited, allowing yourself to be exploited because there's something that you get out of being exploited also. So it's kind of what I call a mutually parasitic relationship.
Yes.
And that's not healthy. It's not helpful. It doesn't get you to good places to be making bad choices.
No.
I mean, parents teach their kids that. Well, guess what? That's life. Your story illustrates that very thing. And it's interesting that because of the experiences that you have this strong ethic that has come out of it because you have experienced the consequences, the bad consequences of bad choices. You have observed the bad consequences from bad choices. And now you have a strong ethic that has grown out of that I hope is passed on to the people who are listening.
Yes.
Now, some of those people are vulnerable, or they know somebody who's vulnerable. What's your message to them?
My message is that you can do, or have anything that is, and my hope is that through this whole podcast, if you're listening and you're out there and you're in this situation, and I know a lot of people are probably listening to it that are incarcerated because they have ways of doing that as well. If you are in jail or on your way to jail, or you know somebody in jail, encourage them to stay focused on their self. Do what you got to do to better yourself. You have to really take your time and utilize it wisely. Get involved in the programs. help each other, to better each other. Just like people click to be bad, you can click to be good too. If there's something that you're trying to do educational wise that they don't have, submit it, request for it, ask. It's okay to ask. They might not have a program that it is that you desire to do, but if you ask, I'm sure that, trust and believe, somewhere down the line, the Department of Correction is not all bad. There's definitely opportunity for you to be successful coming out of prison. You just have to utilize your time wisely. It's okay to speak up. If you're having problems with correctional officers, I pray that if there's anybody in administration that's over me, that's up under the sound of my voice, that I truly believe the more accountability that there is, that if you install fear in these people before you hire them and let them know that you're not playing with them and that this is something that you really want to do, that they can be successful at it. There's doors of opportunity that can open to further their career if this is what they desire to do and they're professional about it. Or if you got those ones that are just taking this job for money and you let them know, look, this is what's going to happen. If you cross that line, there's no fear in officers. There's no accountability for majority of them. You know, it's okay to resign and find a job somewhere else. That needs to stop. You know, your goal is to keep your staff. And in order to keep your staff, you got to do what? The right thing. It goes for character and integrity as far as the higher up people go too, because your prison is your prison. Administration is yours. So in order for you to keep a good name, you got to do what? Keep good staff. You got to do what you got to do. And those ones that aren't serving you purpose, that are making it more harder for you to run that prison and do whatever it is that you need to do to make that a successful prison, get rid of them. I believe once people see that there's going to be accountability, I believe that it'll stop. It's never going to stop totally, but I truly believe that it would make a person think before they act or cross that line.
Yes.
If they know that there's definitely going to be some consequences behind it and you mean what you say and you say what you mean. When it comes to those that are incarcerated or on their way to prison or whatever your situation may be, if someone does cross the line, it's okay to tell somebody. If you have to keep telling until you get till your voice is heard, do what you got to do, because you're going to help somebody else along the way. And while you're in there, just really utilize the programs. Take advantage of whatever they have to offer. If you can't find that program, request for it, alternate it. There's something in there that you can do to better yourself. But the best way that you can rehabilitate yourself is to focus on you, your hopes, your goals, and your dreams. And one thing that I've always told my inmates, you came in there by yourself, you're going home by yourself. There's no true friendships in jail. You have associates. You have people that, trust and believe when you leave there, they're never going to think about you again. Those officers that are telling you they love you and they want to be with you, soon as somebody come on the news that looks better than you do, your history. So don't even put yourself in that situation. You really have to get focused and utilize the programs. Take advantage of the schools. Take advantage of everything they have to offer. The programs, and I truly believe it would at least lessen some of the repeat offenders that we have if there's, accountability for them and they utilize their time wisely.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for this powerful conversation with Rachelle Conley. Please magnify the impact of her message by sharing a link to it with friends and on your personal and organization's social media. Our next episode will feature a conversation with a man who describes how addiction led him to live a double life. On one side as a soldier and a respectable citizen, and on the other side as a drug addict, caught in a cycle of criminality and jail, until, as he describes it, God stepped in and rescued him. You won't want to miss his description of what it's like to look at the world through the eyes of a drug addict. To make sure you hear that and other episodes, hit the subscribe or the follow button. If you're watching on YouTube, the like button. And share the link to our website on social media. JusticeVoices.org. That's justicevoices, all one word, .org. See you in our next episode. This is Justice Voices, eye-opening stories and insights about justice, healing, and safer communities. This episode is brought to you with support from the Field Foundation of Illinois through a Healing Illinois grant administered by United Way of Central Illinois.